The rain started the same night Mira Khan learned her life had been quietly stolen from her. She stood backstage at the small city theater, holding a bouquet she had bought for herself as a joke, waiting for her husband Armand to arrive. The lights from the stage slipped through the curtain in thin golden lines, and the sound of applause filled the hall. It should have been her standing there, bowing, smiling, feeling alive again. Instead, she watched another actress perform. The role that once belonged to her, a role she had rehearsed for months, before suddenly being replaced without explanation. Myra told herself it was only bad luck. She had stepped away from acting after marriage, after moving cities for Armand's career, after convincing herself that stability mattered more than dreams. She had trusted his promises when he said there would be time later, that her talent would wait. But talent, she was beginning to understand, did not wait. It faded quietly when ignored. Her phone buzzed. A message from Armand appeared, running late. Don't wait up. No apology. No question about the performance. No interest in the evening she had spent preparing for weeks. She stared at the message. Longer than necessary, feeling something small crack inside her chest, behind her. Two theater assistants whispered, unaware she could hear them. I heard the director change casting because of Armand, sir. One said softly. The sponsor. The other replied, yes. Apparently his company funded the show. He suggested someone more reliable. Mira's fingers tightened around the bouquet. Her name was never spoken, but she felt it hanging in the air. Reliable. The word echoed sharply. She stepped away before they noticed her, her heartbeat loud enough to drown the applause. Outside, the rain fell harder. She walked without direction, her mind replaying every conversation from the past year. Armand encouraging her to rest instead of auditioning. Armand reminding her how stressful acting was. Armand insisting she focus on their home while he handled finances. At the time, it sounded like care. Right. Now it felt like control disguised as kindness. When she reached home, the apartment was dark. She placed the untouched bouquet on the table and sat on the couch, still wearing her coat. Silence wrapped around her. She opened her laptop, searching for the theater's official announcement post. There it was, a smiling photo of the new lead actress, congratulated by sponsors. One sponsor logo stood prominently in the corner. Armand's company. Her breath slowed. Strange calm replaced the shock. He had known, not only known, he had decided. The realization didn't come with tears. It came with clarity. Every delayed audition, every canceled meeting, every gentle suggestion that she wasn't ready yet suddenly formed a pattern. Armand hadn't protected her from failure. He had prevented her from succeeding. The door unlocked near midnight. Armand entered, shaking rain from his jacket, speaking casually as if nothing had changed. You're still awake? Should sleep. Earlier, Mira watched him carefully. His voice sounded normal, warm even. That almost hurt more. How was your evening? She asked. Busy, he said quickly. Work meetings. Same old. He avoided her eyes. It's a small detail, but tonight she noticed everything. She nodded slowly. Did you visit the theater? His pause lasted less than a second, but it confirmed everything. No, he replied. Would I? Mira smiled faintly. It was the first lie she had clearly seen from him. She realized then how many she must have missed before. I was just asking, she said, standing. I'm tired. She walked past him toward the bedroom, her expression calm, her steps steady. Inside, however, thoughts raced faster than fear. Betrayal did not feel loud or dramatic. It felt quiet, like discovering the ground beneath you had never been solid. That night, she didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, remembering who she had been before marriage. Confident, fearless, stubborn enough to chase auditions across cities. Somewhere along the way, she had become smaller, softer, easier to manage. She had believed love required sacrifice. She had never imagined sacrifice could become disappearance. Morning arrived, gray and cold. Armand left early, kissing. her forehead in routine affection. She almost laughed at how natural he acted. When the door closed, she opened his study for the first time in months. The room smelled faintly of paper and coffee. Files were arranged neatly, his laptop resting on the desk. Mira hesitated only briefly before opening it. She knew his password. He had once told her they had no secrets. The irony-stung emails appeared one by one. Business proposals, sponsorship agreements. And then she found it, a message thread between Armand and the theater director. "We appreciate your support. As discussed, we will adjust casting. Stability is important for investors." Another message followed from Armand. "Thank you. Mira is talented, but acting environments can be unpredictable. I prefer she stays away for now." She read the sentence again and again. Not cruel words. Not angry words. Calm, reasonable words written by someone convinced he was right. That hurt the most. He hadn't betrayed her out of hatred. He had done it because he believed he knew what was best for her life. Mira closed the laptop slowly. Her reflection appeared. Faintly on the dark screen, tired eyes, confused expression. A stranger staring back. For hours she sat in silence, letting the truth settle. Anger arrived gradually, not as an explosion, but as warmth spreading through cold skin. She thought of every opportunity she had declined because Armand advised caution. Every moment she doubted herself because he subtly questioned her readiness. He hadn't shouted or forced her. He had simply redirected her path until she no longer recognized it. By afternoon, she walked back to the theater. Rehearsals were underway. She watched from the last row as the new actress performed her scenes. The audience seats were empty, yet Mira felt like an outsider watching her own life continue without her. The director noticed her and approached nervously. "Mira, I meant to call you." "It's all right," she said calmly. He looked relieved, misunderstanding her composure. "These decisions are complicated." "Sponsorship pressures you didn't choose," she interrupted gently. Were asked. His silence confirmed it. "I hope this show succeeds," she added, surprising even herself with the steadiness of her voice. Then she turned and left before emotion could betray her. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky cleared slightly, sunlight breaking through clouds. Mira stood there for a long moment, feeling something shift inside her. Pain remained, but beneath it grew determination. She wasn't only hurt, she was awake. For years, she had shaped her life around someone else's expectations. Now she saw the cost clearly. Trust once broken did not simply return. It demanded answers. It demanded balance. That evening, Armand returned home, cheerful, talking about future plans, vacations, investments, stability. Mira listened quietly, studying him like a character she needed to understand. She realized revenge did not begin with anger. It began with knowledge. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing her silence. She smiled softly. "Just remembering who I used to be." He laughed lightly, assuming nostalgia. "People change. That's life." "Yes," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "People do change." And in that moment she made a decision she did not yet fully understand herself. She would not confront him immediately. She would not cry or accuse. She would learn why he believed control was love. She would rebuild herself piece by piece, quietly, patiently, because betrayal had taken her stage, her confidence, and her voice. And she intended to take them back as night settled over the city. Myra opened her old script notebooks stored deep inside a drawer. Dust rose into the air as she flipped through pages filled with handwritten notes, emotions, dreams. She once chased without fear. Her hands trembled slightly, not from sadness, but from recognition. She had not disappeared. She had only been waiting. The first act of her new story had begun, not on a stage under bright lights, but in silence, where resolve grows strongest. And though Armand slept peacefully beside her, unaware of the storm forming behind her calm expression, Mira felt something she had not felt in years: purpose. The betrayal had ended one version of her life, but it had also awakened another one that would no longer ask permission to exist. Mira didn't sleep that night, but it wasn't restlessness, it was purpose. She sat at the desk in the dim glow of her laptop, opening acting reels she had stored years ago, watching herself perform with raw emotion and unshakable presence. Each scene reminded her of the woman she had been before compromise, before manipulation, before the subtle betrayal of trust had slowly rewritten her life. The anger from part one had transformed into something sharper now: focus, like a blade honed on injustice. She realized revenge would not be loud or explosive. It would be quiet, precise, and inevitable. The next morning, Mira began small. She went back to the theater, attending rehearsals under the guise of casual interest. No confrontation, no accusations, only observation. The new lead actress performed with polish but lacked the spark Mira knew she had once owned. Directors and sponsors seemed satisfied, oblivious to the nuance Mira noticed, the tiny details in a scene that could make or break an audience's connection. As she made mental notes, cataloging weaknesses and strengths. Knowledge, she reminded herself, was the foundation of power. At home, she watched Armand. He moved with the ease of a man who believed he had full control. Meetings, calls, emails, he was confident, efficient, convinced he had done the right thing. Mira kept her distance, asking questions only when necessary, listening intently when he spoke. Every word, every gesture became part of her understanding. He had taken her dreams, not out of cruelty, but because he believed he knew better. That belief made his control absolute. And to dismantle it, she needed more than emotion. She needed strategy. She reconnected with old colleagues and mentors in the acting world. Emails, messages, discreet calls, every connection built silently. She offered small insights, suggested collaborations, and let her presence grow quietly behind the scenes. No one suspected her motives. She learned who could influence casting decisions, who could sponsor performances, who could create opportunities that mattered. By the end of the week, she had a network forming, a web that could support her return without relying on Armand's approval. The psychological weight of planning her comeback, of quietly plotting her return, was heavy. Mira battled constant doubt. Could she really succeed? Could she reclaim her own life without losing herself in anger? At night, she stared at the ceiling, wrestling with her own morality. Revenge, she understood, could be intoxicating, but it could also consume. She envisioned confronting Armand directly, accusations, explanations, fury, but quickly dismissed it. That path would satisfy nothing. True victory would be the reclaiming of her voice, her stage, and her agency. That was the real revenge. To prove, without words, that she was unstoppable. Days turned into weeks. Mira's preparation became a rhythm. She rehearsed lines in empty rooms, recording herself, critiquing her performances, perfecting her timing. She attended industry events, not as a guest, but as a subtle force, observing, listening, remembering faces, building relationships that could later open doors. Every interaction was calculated, purposeful, but never malicious. She smiled, complimented, appeared gracious, even as the fire of determination burned quietly behind her eyes. Armand began to notice changes. Mira no longer deferred to him, no longer hesitated when she spoke. She asked questions about her own interests, subtly reshaping conversations to include her opinions. He responded with confusion, sometimes irritation, but she kept her composure. She realized that confrontation was unnecessary. Confidence alone unsettled him. The subtle reclamation of her presence became a weapon more powerful than any accusation could be. Then came an opportunity she had been waiting for. A local production seeking a lead for a high-profile performance. The theater director remembered her reputation, though the sponsors had overlooked her. Mira submitted her application with carefully prepared reels, references, and recommendations. She knew the stakes. A rejection could hurt, but she also knew the worst-case scenario could still teach her lessons. For the first time in years, she felt the thrill of possibility rather than fear of disappointment. When the call came, her pulse raced, but her voice was steady. The director offered her the role, praising her dedication and unique skill. Mira accepted, quietly victorious. That night, she rehearsed for hours, perfecting every nuance, every gesture, every line. She was not performing to prove. Armin Rongshi was performing to prove herself right. Each movement, each emotion, reminded her of her identity. Of the woman who had once dreamed fearlessly, Armand noticed the change immediately. He commented on her sudden assertiveness, her renewed focus, her absence of hesitation. He didn't understand the depth of her preparation, only that she had shifted. Mira smiled politely, answered questions, and let him observe, unaware that every calculated step was a quiet message. She was no longer under his influence. By the time opening night arrived, Mira had transformed completely. She walked onto the stage with confidence, her body and voice carrying years of suppressed passion. The audience felt it, the director noticed it, and even the sponsors sensed the energy that could not be manufactured. Mira delivered every line with precision and precision. And emotion, reminding herself that this moment was her own. Revenge was not in confrontation or exposure, it was in the reclaiming of power. In the undeniable presence of her talent, when the final applause rang out, Mira stood center stage, chest rising and falling, sweat on her brow, feeling alive in a way she hadn't in years. She glanced at the side of the stage, knowing Armand was in the audience, probably proud but unaware of the quiet storm that had rebuilt her. She didn't need his acknowledgement. She had already won. The plan she had nurtured in silence had unfolded perfectly. Every careful step reinforcing her control over her own life. That night, alone in her apartment, Mira reflected on the weeks leading up to her triumph. She realized that revenge was not about punishment, but reclamation. She had not destroyed Armand. She had rebuilt herself. The moral weight of her choices rested heavily on her, but she did not regret the careful planning, the patience, or the subtlety. Every step had required discipline, restraint, and intelligence. Every decision had tested her emotional resilience. And through it all, she had learned the truth about herself. She was capable of more than she had allowed herself to believe. Myra looked at the quiet city outside her window. Rain had washed the streets clean, leaving the night clear and reflective. She understood now that revenge could take many forms. And the most powerful was not fear yet, was reclamation, control, and the quiet satisfaction of proving one's worth. She had prepared, observed, and acted. And the satisfaction, though not loud or dramatic, was deep, lasting, and transformative. Her journey was far from over, but Mira felt ready. She had survived betrayal, nurtured anger into purpose, and transformed her pain into power. The next steps would test her further, but she now faced them armed with clarity, focus, and the undeniable knowledge that her life, her talent, and her voice belonged to her alone. The storm inside her had not ended, had only strengthened, and Mira was ready for whatever came next.